Hello, everyone. Happy to have you enrolled in this webinar. I see that the clock is approximately 1500 in some few seconds. There is a recording that has already started, so you will receive an email, everyone that is participating, and have the link to the webinar. So I know that there are some participants that are not able to attend online now, but they will be able to look at it later, and also feel free to share it with colleagues. My name is Frank Emil Moen. I'm the CEO of Energy Innovation, situated in the southwest corner of Norway, in Egersund, south of Stavanger. And we are running a training and education and innovation center here in Egersund towards mainly wind, the wind industry, but we also have other energy R&D projects, integrated energy systems as well. I will start with a presentation on behalf of Energy Innovation, and after that we will hear from both GWO and Wind Europe. So, and at the end, when we are finished with the presentation, there is an opening for having questions in the Q&A session. We have set aside approximately 10 minutes for the Q&A. So, as you are aware of from the invitation, this is a part of the T-Shore projects, Erasmus Plus projects, and the regional COVI for offshore wind in Norway. That is a collaboration between Energy Innovation and Fagskolen Rogaland. It's the Polytechnical School of Rogaland, and all the industry partners that are in the collaboration units of the Erasmus Plus projects. Okay, then I will share my screen, the presentation. It's a lot of slides, but I will keep it quite short after all. This is a slide showing our center and where we are situated in Egersund. The idea about the center, Egersund Energy Hub, is actually to have a setup for collaboration between governance, industry, and the education sector. So this is a hub where we have players that are conducting services for renewable energy. We have apprenticeship offices. We have the Dalarna Vocational School that provide Vintech education, and we have also Fagskolen Rogaland, the Polytechnical School, in place. This map, maybe some of you have seen, is quite new. It's an update over all the offshore wind developments, the ongoing running projects, and projects in constructions, and the planned projects. And what we all know is that there is huge development plans for offshore wind in Europe as all over the world. Also in Norway, as you see on the left corner with 30 gigawatt installed capacity by 2040. We have, through Energy Innovation and through the regional COVI and the T-Shore project, we are mapping the needs of people and the needs of competences in this business in the years to come. And you see the one in red here is the one that we are focusing most on from our side, is the vocational trained personnel for the wind turbine specific operations during construction and installation and operation and maintenance. That is our main focus area. This does not mean that we also look at other aspects of this, and we have collaboration with university level, higher education entities to discuss the needs of training and education on a higher level than the EQF level 3, 4, and 5, as we are focusing on. One example, our owner, Norway Group, one of our owners, they are having this development plan for Windworks Jelsa. a facility where there will be a capacity of building 70 floating wind turbines every year. And a facility like this in the fjords of not so far from Stavanger will have a need for approximately 5,000 people. And of course, what we see so far when there are construction yards for assembling of offshore wind, there is also a need for a setup of training and education. And actually, it makes sense to set up a training center actually at the facility because the number of certifications and courses needed is so high. When we are mapping the needs of these turbine-specific competences and how many people that we need to train and educate, we get some numbers from the cases that we know. We know the person needs for a given wind farm of a given size for the operation and maintenance phase. That is the numbers that you see in the dark blue on the graph. This is the curve for 30 gigawatt of installation in Norway and a predicted development line for the need of people. And you see that the light blue is actually bigger than the dark blue, and the light blue is the construction and installation phase. So there is a huge need of people during these years when the installation is actually going on for the assembly part with wind technicians in special. And when you are going into operation maintenance, the number decreases a little bit, but hopefully there will be an ongoing process of combination of construction and installation and operation maintenance during the next decades, mostly overall Europe. So in Norway, and actually in these numbers, we are not including the numbers of people that are coming from the supply chain companies that are doing service. So this is for the people that for construction and installation and the people that are working permanently connected to a wind farm for operation maintenance as wind technician educated personnel. So the numbers for Norway is probably that we need to train in between 8 and 10,000 wind technicians for the 30 gigawatt of offshore wind. How have we been working for building competence? Well, that's through partly international collaboration has been very important. And the latest project is the T-Show project, as already mentioned. And in Norway, we have established this regional COVI. That is a collaboration between the wind farm developers, energy companies, the supply chain, the supporting organizations, and the educational entities that are serving the industry. The activities that we have in a COVI, it's many different things connected to collaboration. We are working with the authorities connected to the public education of wind technicians. We are organizing meetings. We are working for getting more apprenticeship places for students. We are trying to get the industry to support the education system with good equipment, but also that they participate in the development of learning and training scenarios and digital learning tools, etc. We are also participating in different meetings with clusters, associations, unions, trade fairs, etc. And we are actively involved in Norwegian Offshore Wind Cluster and the National Competence Center for Offshore Wind, where I myself is the director of the board, is the governmental instrument of developing competences for offshore wind in Norway, where they have one project, WindComp. It's a national project mapping competence and skill gaps needed for the offshore wind industry. And we also conduct and develop and run and participate in specific projects together with the industry and other stakeholders. As one example, what the COVI do is to arrange webinars like this on different topics. So please feel free to give input on what kind of webinars that you would like to have. We are developing an online course for an introduction course for offshore wind, typically towards management, people that have a position, they want to learn more about offshore wind business. The first 3 modules will be in place probably in October, and will be open for anyone. We have went into a collaboration with ARMSA Academy for more high-level courses that is both in-person courses, virtual courses online, and e-learning sessions towards management of safety for offshore wind. The National Competence Center for the Norwegian Competence Center for Offshore Wind are a newly established initiative that is supported by the government, and the idea about this is to build more and better competence and awareness towards the needs for the development of offshore wind in Norway, but also have an international collaboration on this. And one part of this is to this WindComp project that are doing a very detailed job together with industry through many interview sessions and meetings to map the competence gaps and analyze the situation. Just to mention, we are also involved in R&D projects. So this is one example. We are working for having an installation of this platform, combined wave and wind energy, outside Eigerøy, the island just behind me here. And we will use this as a platform also for education and follow-up R&D projects. We conduct other R&D projects, for example, condition-based operation maintenance services for blades, where we also look at the needs for training and education towards inspection and blade repair and application of leading edge application, protecting the blades. And because there is a need for more courses, more modules that are more specific towards the blades. And just to start ending my presentation, we are conducting a large number of GWO modules, but we have also developed a service technician education that we are running, for example, together with the labor and welfare organization in Norway, connected to unemployed people. What we have also developed with one of our partners in the COVI is online modules for the GWO. So it's possible to take the theory part of the education as online training. We run collaboration training with the rescue services, and we also do scenario-based training out on the wind farms together with the wind farms operators. This is the upskilling program I mentioned, together with NAV, with a very high success rate, actually 100% out in job after the 3-month program. And that is a combination of the GWO portfolio together with the energy operator education that we have in Egersund, and wrap that together in a 63 days training module that could also be used for upskilling of personnel that are working in other sectors. And last, what we have done in Norway, we export through a franchising, have established a center in New York. The second one is coming up in Louisiana, being certified this month, actually end of this month, and Gdynia was certified last month. And we want to have more partners to collaborate on the efforts of getting in place the right competence. So I see that I was talking too much. Sorry about that. So I will stop sharing my screen, and I am giving the podium for the next speaker, and that I think is Ralph. Isn't that correct, if I remember correctly?
Yeah, thanks, Frank. And thanks for the introduction, and also plenty of information on GWO so that I don't actually have to repeat it. which is nice. I'm here at short notice, so those of you who are expecting Thomas Redmond, he's one of our project managers who was meant to be speaking today. He's been called away on a project, so funnily enough. So I'm stepping in, so I'm going to talk a little bit around the context of GWO and also our long-term strategy on workforce development. So hopefully it'll supplement a little bit about what Frank was demonstrating there on behalf of his business and what's going on out of Norway. My perspective, just for if you're interested, I've been with GWO for 6 years. I'm responsible for global development and stakeholder relations. So I take a necessarily high-level view, so we won't be speaking, you know, at a national or regional level for most of this. But if you've got any specific questions about one country or another, then don't hesitate to ask. Just a moment. So I can no longer see. Maybe Frank, if you can just nod if my screen is working. Up. Thanks. Okay. So I'm going to start with a brief history lesson, and Frank explained an awful lot about what GWO already does. But so GWO was founded in 2012. It wasn't officially founded until about 2015, but originally member companies got together and created the first basic safety training standard. That operated as an open source document that training providers could use as the foundation for their course material. And that was the way it worked. But we needed, after some time, a governance system to make sure that that employers and people who were sending their employees for training knew what they were getting and had a verifiable way of checking that the training had been delivered to a quality assured standard. So in 2016, we created and launched the WINDA database. So every GWO training course and every record of a module that's completed has to be uploaded into WINDA, and it gave us a way also of measuring the numbers of people who are GWO trained. So we began at that point in our history to start measuring the size of the technician workforce using the different data points we had in that system. Essentially, we operated roughly in the same way until about 2019, adding more training standards, many of which you've seen on the list that Frank showed to you before, and adding more quality assurance steps along the way to make sure that the increasing size of the GWO certified training network was providing the same quality assurance across all of the different countries that it was now available in. Coming towards 2022 and 2023 and towards now, the volume of different training standards that had been created, from on the left, basic safety training, which is just 4 or 5 days of very, very entry level safety knowledge, up to a portfolio of around about 11 different training standards now. The member companies saw an opportunity to group those training standards together into something that they call the entry-level framework, and they've apportioned different modules into as recommended and task-specific aspects of 3 different agreed job profiles for wind turbine technicians. That's pre-assembly technician, installation technician, and operations and maintenance technician. I haven't got any further details about that, but you can find information on what goes into each of those course packages on our website. But what this demonstrates is that having gone from a purely standardization remit, GWO was now operating within the workforce development sphere of influence, and the numbers that we were recording inside our database were increasing, and the standard was becoming more widely adopted across global markets. So we moved from being a organization with a relatively simple objective to standardized basic safety training into providing a framework of training programs that can furnish employers with a skilled and qualified entry-level workforce. Just a quick reminder about what GWO standards do and don't refer to. And again, I think you had a reference in one of your slides, Frank, but GWO standards are for wind technicians themselves, only involved in construction, installation, or operations and maintenance of offshore wind. It's a sizable chunk of the entire value chain of the workforce, and I'll come to a few numbers in one of my slides in a moment. Specifically for offshore wind, we often get asked questions about how GWO standards interface with other existing offshore standards. And this, forgive the simplicity of this diagram, but it can be useful to understand that obviously GWO standards are designed purely for wind technicians. This does influence some people who are working at port side if they're on pre-assembly. So that's if they're coming in to contact with turbines themselves at a pre-assembly port side station. And then in general, the other professionals around the offshore sector, the vessel crew, the mariners and so on, are usually subject to different standards, STCW, APITO and others. And we refer to the IMCA, International Marine Contractors Association, CO18 guidelines, which provides a decent clarification about which professions are in scope for GWO training and which ones aren't. So coming back to this association that GWO found itself with workforce development, for about 4 years, we've been producing with Global Wind Energy Council, the Global Wind Workforce Outlook. This is the highest level set of figures from last year's report in 2023. And in the report itself, we drill down on a country basis, on a platform basis in terms of offshore and onshore. But overall, what you see is a steadily growing size of the workforce population for C&I and O&M technicians, and an increasing proportion of those that we would count as having received GWO training. It's important to recognise that these numbers include the Chinese workforce, which is well over half of the global wind technician workforce, and so far that region hasn't adopted GWO training, so represents the biggest potential area to benefit from standardization as far as we see it. The other key finding from last year's report is the bullet point on the bottom right, which is that through some analysis of attrition rates and so on in technician workforces, we identified that up to 243,000 new entrants will be required in order to make up that 2027 figure. So in order to accommodate, in order to grow the workforce to that size, we'll need to replace a large number of it as well from natural attrition. So that, in a nutshell, is the workforce development challenge at a global level for onshore and offshore wind. And it's something we'll be looking into in more detail in this year's report when we produce the 5th one. That will be out in November time. So, having sort of established and accepted a place within the workforce development challenge, what we wanted to understand from GWO's point of view is how do we play a productive role in helping to solve it? We sum it up in the following ways: that the wind industry obviously needs to recruit enough adequately trained workers. Where we can attest and be confident that global standards like GWO match the training needs of international OEMs and developers. But we've increasingly found over the last couple of years that policymakers, governments and international associations are searching for a reliable way to invest in the upskilling of young people and transitioning workers. And the real challenge is the final point, which is how do we bridge the gap between what the industry says it wants and needs and recommends in the form of industry standards, and what public policy decision makers use as their benchmark for releasing funds, for example, is that there has to be a strong case for employability at the end of all of this. And speculative training without work at the end of it is obviously not going to help anybody. So we're definitely not supporting that approach. But meanwhile, we've been involved in lots of conversations with organisations around this, and we find that there's a lot of solution searching, and what we're aiming to do is to improve the way we collaborate with one another so that we can work together and benefit from one another's mutual competencies. The most obvious search for solutions that we see is reflected in Wind Europe's strategy, that a priority is for harmonisation and mutual recognition of skills and certifications, and that's certainly something that we support, and we've been involved in with other standards bodies, for example, for a number of years, and we'll continue to work closely in relation to that. Elsewhere, there's the interest in standardising further education programmes to develop the offshore wind workforce. So, I mean, further education could be on a similar level to the course programmes that you've described yourself, Frank. And forgive the slightly less smiley face. It's not that we don't support this. It's just that we understand what goes into creating a globally standardized set of learning objectives, and we want to ensure that we work closely together so that we can benefit from one another's expertise on this. Beyond that, and at the other level, is that, and this is something that I would admit GWO's failure in, is that we've simply not explained the pure value proposition that we think GWO gives to employers, because we were approached by a couple of government institutions, their embassies, and a couple of industry associations who told us that they wanted to create a globally recognised certificate allowing certified skilled workers to support the energy transition. Essentially, that's what GWO already does. So, you know, we were pretty alarmed at that when we were approached by those organisations, because they said, oh, we should create a global database so that we can store all of these records, which is, again, exactly what GWO provides to the industry. And we're very keen to help everybody we come into contact with avoid duplicating processes and solutions that have already been created. So that's just a little example of the kind of waters that we're involved in at the moment. So that's kind of the backstory. So what's GWO itself doing? Well, we just launched and agreed a new strategy with our board of directors. GWO is a non-profit industry association. We're owned by 28 member companies, and they're all large OEMs and large developers of onshore and offshore wind. We're calling it Workforce 26 for fairly obvious reasons, but it contains 4 key objectives, under which there are several initiatives that we want to work on. Some of them are a maintenance and a extension of what we already do, and some of them are very new, particularly this clarification that GWO is focused on workforce development for the industry on a global basis. First up is quality of training. This is not a new strategic direction, but it is nonetheless an important part of providing quality assured products, so that any one of the training centres that an employer or indeed a school sends one of their graduating pupils onto following a course delivers the same learning outcomes wherever that takes place. So we're addressing various different initiatives on that in terms of instructor capabilities, and focusing into the learning outcomes that people receive when they complete GWO training. For workforce development itself, this is very much an investment in our own capacity. So, I mean, for a long time we've been working, we're a relatively small secretariat of 28 full-time staff, so we're investing in our teams so that we can collaborate more closely with the likes of Wind Europe and with the organisations that Franca is dealing with, in particular, just so that we can learn and figure out how our systems should dovetail together to benefit one another. And on that point in particular, the focus we're looking at for the next 6 months or so is the merit system through training providers. And this is something that I'd be keen to share more detail with you if I've got a bit more time. Ultimately, training providers, there are 550 of them around the world, have the opportunity to be able to merit existing training into the GWO scheme and provide that oh so valuable Winder ID at the end of the day. And if there's a chance for courses of any type to be merited onto the GWO system, we know that the employers at the end of the day would appreciate that. Just a couple more slides. I'm not sure how long I've been going. I haven't got a timer on my screen. This is not a change for us, but we have a top 20 market strategy to improve the growth and availability of training and the availability of the portfolio of training. Coming back again to Frank's slides, it looked from first glance that energy innovation covers pretty much everything available in the GWO portfolio. My team's purpose is to ensure that that kind of picture is more common, so that GWO training providers aren't just delivering basic safety training on its own, but they're delivering the full entry-level portfolio wherever it can be made available. And then finally, this is a move in a new direction for us. We're working with the Global Solar Council to invest in a solar PV basic safety training standard. We're applying the GWO project methodology to develop this training standard as a proof of concept, around which the Global Wind Organization training provider network could potentially be a distribution mechanism of an entry-level training standard like that. From the point of view of our members, we have several utilities who have portfolios of different renewable assets in their organizations. So this is something that's very much coming from a demand from the industry. And hopefully it will demonstrate a proof of concept about how standardization can benefit other renewable sectors as well, and give potentially more mobility to workforces who are exposed to the different technologies within a single kind of scenario. But that's it from me, I think. Yes, thank you very much. And I'll hand back to you, Frank.
Yeah, thank you very much, and you were very good at keeping the time, actually catching in my overdue time. So that's very good. Oh, very interesting. I will come back to you with some few questions. And for all of you attending, it's possible to write a question in the Q&A session. So if you have any questions in mind, please write them down. So Mariana, the floor is yours. We are very happy to also have in Europe participating and talking about what you are doing in the work group of skills and education.
Thank you. Can you let me know if you can see my screen, but in presenter mode? Or sorry, not in presenter mode, full screen.
Yes, full screen. That's fine.
Perfect. Okay, fantastic. Great. So a huge thanks to you, Frank, for inviting us, and also to you, Ralph, for setting the scene as well. There's quite a few points that I will want to build on. But first things first, just to introduce myself. I'm Mariana Batista. I'm the Senior Advisor on Education and Skills at Wind Europe. For those of you who do not know who Wind Europe is, we are the leading voice of the wind industry. It's a trade association that is promoting wind energy across the continent with over 500 members. You can see some of the members here. They span the entire value chain. Both Energy Innovation and GWO are also our members. And the core business of Wind Europe is, one, to coordinate international policy, communications, research, analysis. We often organize various events, but also bring more awareness to the benefits of wind, as well as working very closely with our industry to also get a better idea of what the market outlook is. Actually, right now there's a webinar also happening in parallel on the market outlook for 2030, but this will be available because there's a recording. So if you want to check it out afterwards, you're more than welcome to. And maybe Frank, you can also support and spread the message. But today, I mean, I will be talking a little bit about outlook, but less about the market, but more so jobs and how Wind Europe is actually supporting the industry. As GWO, they support more so the well-trained workers for the industry, but on our side is also to ensure how we get the skilled people into the workforce in the first place. So I want to start just by showcasing this slide here. Very similarly to GWO, Wind Europe also conducts their own job market outlook, focused more so just on the EU and the UK. We do align ourselves with GWO once a year. Our market intelligence teams come together to ensure we have more or less the same numbers when looking forward. And the way that it works is we base ourselves on the wind farm projects and convert those gigawatts into the number of jobs that will be needed across the various phases of a project. What we've been able to see so far, and these are numbers that really kind of define the work that we have been doing in the last couple months and in the year, and I would say the year to come, is really the jump. The jump from how many people we have today to how many people we're going to be needing even in 6 years' time. So we look to 2030 as that big number for us, and it's a massive jump. We expect to have over 500,000 people working in the wind industry, both in onshore and offshore. And what we see is that a lot of our members as well, and a lot of other organizations themselves are doing these job market outlook. And sometimes the numbers vary ever so slightly, but what's also very worrying is that they're all very, very high. I mean, that's great. There's going to be lots of jobs in the wind industry, but what we're a bit concerned with is how are we going to find all of these people? And as it's already been said, the wind technicians, they're extremely important. And we do see as well that they make up a huge percentage of the workforce. But when we are talking about, how many people are needed, oftentimes we're looking at the life cycle of an entire project and to kind of see the different occupations throughout the years and the various skill set that is needed. And what we are seeing already is that something that is quite worrying, which is the skills shortage really across, I would say, Europe. I know it's across the globe as well, but particularly when it comes to the various phases and phases from the specific wind farm project. What we've seen already with our members, we surveyed them last year to get a better feel of what were the skill sets that they identified as the most critical, the most crucial, and which were the ones that they were having difficulties in filling in. And most of the results came down to electricians, data analysts, computer engineers, grid engineers, IT specialists, automation experts, data scientists, software developers. So a lot of it had to do with IT and in tech skill set. But that's not to say that we also saw a need when it comes to construction management, maritime training, and indeed health and safety was also a big one. And what we're also seeing, so along from these specific skill sets that are now required that perhaps were not so much in demand a few years ago, what we're also seeing now is the training for these roles are also changing. And it is becoming increasingly challenging, having to find more innovative solutions using VR training, for example. If you think of offshore training, it can be very difficult to get people out there. It can be dangerous for first timers. The weather is not always reliable. So this also has a massive impact on the training schedule. And so what we see now is that the skill sets that are needed for the jobs are changing. The jobs themselves are also changing. We work on various projects that do forecasting for the skill set, but also the occupational profiles that are needed in the next 5 and 10 years. And we see some big changes there as well, which means the way that people are training also has to change. So this really does mean that we're kind of standing at this pivotal moment, and we need to prepare the changing workforce for the jobs of the future, but also for the jobs of today. We do have this sense of we're trying to catch up while still being forward-looking. And it's very clear, and as Ralph and Frank also put it, there is a sense of urgency. We do need to be more efficient when it comes to the training and education, but that doesn't necessarily mean by cutting corners. It's more so by finding ways of combining training, blended training, bringing people that aren't necessarily wanting to work directly for wind, but maybe coming from other sectors. And the same thing when it comes to students also who are entering universities. How can you bring students coming from other faculties into the wind industry? And so we certainly commend organizations like GWO that are working on, the entry level wind technician framework. We for sure see the value in that, in understanding what are the entry level requirements. We see how this reduces bottlenecks in training, and it provides a very stable and competent entry level workforce. And even though these frameworks are very important and we need to have them, for us at Wind Europe, we, as even though the well-trained part is extremely important, we focus more so on just getting people into the industry, raising awareness of the industry, growing the pull, and ultimately growing the pipeline for our members. And we see this part as a really tough nut to crack, I must be very honest, because what we see is that our members, so the developers, the manufacturers, the O&Ms, they have their network, but we need to start tapping into other networks, people who wouldn't go into the wind industry, who probably don't even know that they could find a job there. So that's what Wind Europe, that's what we've been kind of focusing on, is really trying to create that positive awareness, but also to showcase that it's beyond just wind technicians. There are also many other occupations that are available to everyone. So when it comes to very specifically what we are doing in terms of the need, we see that the workforce needs an urgent upscaling. And this has become actually one of the 10 priorities for Wind Europe for 2024. And our focus is very clear. We want to attract, we want to retain, and we want to develop talent for the wind industry. And so the first, as I have already mentioned, is really profiling the wind sector as an attractive employer, showing that it is a diverse workspace. It has opportunities for everyone. And a lot of this work is done through targeted actions, through campaigns, connecting members to other initiatives. I actually just got off a call right now with a large-scale partnership, which is essentially all of the renewable energy sectors for onshore renewable energies. And, we were discussing the need for campaigns on vocational training and technical training. How can you ensure that students would choose to go into a technical pathway or educational pathway as opposed to universities, knowing that we need more people with those specific skills? And a lot of the times, these are also things that we need to think about, that it's not just students, but also attracting parents, because parents are also the ones that sometimes help students decide which specific career and pathway they should take. So what we try to do when it comes to profiling the wind sector is going a lot more beyond the immediate network that our members have. At the same time, another important element is really embedding wind in education across Europe. We understand that if we're able to fill in those vacancies and get the people that we need for the workforce for 2030, we will find ourselves in a much similar, if not worse, situation 10 years from now or 15 years from now. So it really has to start at a much younger age. And this, of course, is always very difficult to make the case of you need to connect with young people. When I say young, anyone from 5 years old to 15 years old. But there are lots of studies that prove actually that students, young students between the age of 10 to 13, 14 years old, that's actually when they start to really get a better feel of what could they actually do post high school or post secondary school. And what we're trying to do from Wind Europe is working very closely with the national associations, because they oftentimes are what we consider the gatekeepers, both to the industry, but also to the educational authorities, in really trying to support it, not just getting wind energy per se, but also renewable energies and having more of a climate education, because we need to start working on that now in order to ensure that we will have, a pipeline of good talent in the decade to come. And then finally, and as Ralph also mentioned, that one of our objectives really is to support the faster entry into the workforce. So this is supporting not just the industry as such, but also the universities and the training providers to get people into the workforce fast in an efficient manner, but ensuring that they uphold all of the quality and the standards of the certifications. And this is also ensuring that there is also a promotion of apprenticeships, because we know that that's one of the fastest ways to get people into a company. But it's also where the policy work, and I would say the policy arm of what we're doing at Wind Europe, ensuring that, you know, we can get the right funding for the training centers and the training providers for the reskilling and upskilling projects, as well as lifelong learning. And also that point on harmonization and mutual recognition of skills and certification, ensuring that, you know, those who do decide to go into the workforce, they don't have to, you know, take repetitive training or certificates. And once they have a training that is then recognized by all of the companies and within the entire industry, and also allows for more mobility, so moving from one country to the next. The other point, it's not here, but worth mentioning, we are part of various projects that look a lot at skills forecasting. So what are the skills, the future skills trends? How is that going to impact the capacity demand? Really looking at the digital technology, the artificial intelligence. We know that this is a really big one. Of course, the technologies within the wind industry are advancing, I would say, in a very, very quick way. But that also has a huge impact on the skill sets that are needed. You know, even though the machines are changing, you also need to ensure that the people behind the machines also have the right skill set in place. So we work very closely with various tech companies and universities to also understand the impact of new technologies. So these are just some of the activities. I won't go into too many details, but we, as I said, we have campaigns, we have online platforms to really help people and guide them to get a better understanding of where they could get training, which universities are offering various courses on wind energy. There's 2 points worth mentioning, and they're really closely aligned with, you know, creating that positive awareness. We're working on a documentary series to really showcase, you know, success stories of people who came into wind in probably not the most common trajectory, I guess you could say. People who, for example, may have been a fisherman beforehand, or, you know, working as a dancer. There's all kinds of ways, but it's also to really showcase that you can move with your skills and you can transfer those skills into the wind industry. We also work very closely, as I said, with universities. It comes down to really ensuring that they know what are the career paths that are available to them. And the last bit you see here on the triangle is the different stakeholders that we're working with, and that's what brings me to the working group. We realized very quickly that the topic of skills and education did not fall only within the remits of human resources and talent acquisition. This was a massive challenge that needed quite a few other people to get involved. So this is why universities, the vocational training, the political institutions as well, the national associations, we have all come together because we have, you know, a common goal that is uniting us, and we know that the collaborative efforts are going to pave way for the innovative solutions. So this is why early this year, we launched the Education and Skills Working Group. And this is bringing various stakeholders to the table to discuss, debate, solve challenges together. There are very specific topics that we often discuss on, you know, for example, the role of digitalization, mutual recognition of certifications, the list goes on. But the point really is that we have gone to a place in which the industry knows that we can only solve this if we are going to be doing it together. So here are just some of the deliverables that we focus on. The knowledge base, or the knowledge hub, I would say, is really the idea of bringing everyone together that is already working on fantastic initiatives, and how can we ensure that we bring more visibility to those, not necessarily reinventing the wheel. So this is where we discuss, you know, how do you get the well-trained workers? What can be done at the political level, academic, industry level, so on and so forth. The awareness bit is quite important as well. We know that many of the companies, of course, they have their own campaigns that they run in which they try to get more people into the pipeline. But it really comes down to looking at this as an entire sector. How do we ensure we grow the pie, and then we can divide when we get down the line? And the last point is on culture. And this is really alluding to the fact that we need these many people in the workforce. This is clear, the numbers are there. How do we ensure that we make it a diverse place so that anybody could feel that they could be part of the industry? So the work on diversity, equity, inclusion is a big one for us, making sure that we have, gender parity, but also making sure that minority groups are represented, and not just within teams, but also represented in positions of power as well. So the working group comes together, they discuss the various points. I'm very happy to say that actually we have just launched a task force on diversity, equity, inclusion, in which we will be developing a playbook that is for the industry, by the industry, so we can really show some of those best case practices and also worst case, because it's good to learn what you shouldn't do. On how to have those specific policies within the various companies, whether they are big or small. There's something that everyone can do. And my last point, because I also see I'm running out of time, so I'll just take one more minute, is really the message that I want to drive home is collaboration. As I just said, I was in a call just now with all of the other renewable energy sectors, and we know that we have to approach this together. The workforce is indispensable for us to meet the targets for the green transition. And in many ways, we've been really moving, I would say, in the last few months, but also year, of moving away from that sense of competition, not just between the sectors, but also even between companies, poaching talent. And this happens, and we know that this is happening, and we're really trying to veer away from that. Because in the ideal world, maybe it will be possible to have someone who can move from maybe solar to wind with maybe some of the transferable skills and just adding a few more certifications on top. This is something that is also, many sectors are now alluding to, that this could be a possibility for our future. And of course, we are not opposed to it. If there is a way for us to share talent, that would be ideal. But the point really here is that we absolutely need to collaborate, and that's how we see Wind Europe as an association that's really able to bring our members together, various stakeholders within the industry, all suffering and struggling with the same topic, but from a different angle. And how can we bring them together and essentially solve this issue that is not only pending in the next couple years, but which we're already facing and feeling quite strongly today. So again, if you have any questions now, but also if you'd like to get in touch in the future, here's my contact information. I think, Frank, you can also send it out if you would like to. The working group is open to all of Wind Europe's members, but of course, if there's maybe a very specific point of information you'd like to gather, we're also happy to share that.
Thank you very much, Mariana, and thank you both for two very comprehensive presentations and a lot of information and a lot of topics that is important to discuss and address and collaborate on for sure, both cross nations, cross industry, governance, academic institutions, etc. And maybe I have actually a lot of questions or comments to this. I could start with one of the last things that you were talking about, Mariana, and that is how to get the message out to the right people. Because as I understand, as how you are working in Europe, of course, the people that are close to you, the members that are active in Europe, they have an awareness and understanding of many of these topics, and they like to discuss them. But is it so that you are able through in Europe to reach outside your members, and how do you actually do that? How do you reach the politicians, the industry players that are not actually participating in discussions with Europe in special?
So there's different ways that we do it. When it comes to the policymakers, I mean, many of them have a stake when it comes to the green transition. So we don't necessarily have to knock on, too many doors. Oftentimes they are listening, and of course there's a stake for them as well, and they want to ensure that there is the right workforce for the entire renewable energy sectors. But I think one point that you're alluding to that I didn't get too much time to go into is how do you go beyond that? So the general public, the people that have no idea what it's like to work in wind, they may have seen a wind turbine maybe once or twice whilst driving, but they don't actually know anything that goes behind that. And that is something that we realize that that's an untapped target group. So we have specific projects. So one of them I just briefly mentioned, but for example, right now we're working with a series of influencers who have their own followership, specifically a target group that we have very much so difficulties engaging with, which are young people, you know, the ages of 16 to 24. And we're working with them. And of course, they have their own branding and, you know, what they would like to talk about. But you tell them, okay, this is the situation. This is our challenge. How can you bring some more visibility? Let people know that follow you. And we're talking about hundreds of thousands of people, right? That we wouldn't have that direct connection with. And now suddenly they're able to say, hey, there's a bunch of careers in the industry. Why don't you go find out? Why don't you apply to specific training? Why don't you see if there's training available where you live? And that's those specific target groups that we know our members have difficulties tapping into. It's normal, and us as well. So we're trying to find, you know, innovative ways to get in touch with them.
Yeah, and I think what you said about collaboration and also cross-nation is very important. As I mentioned briefly, is that we have this national or Norwegian Competence Center for Offshore Wind that is the Norwegian governmental instrument to actually do what you're talking about and to collaborate cross-nation towards stats with your efforts, with efforts like these approaches in Norway and in other countries will be important to find one door in to find this information and to navigate and to understand. Ralph, we are most of the attendees, I think they are aware of GWO, and you have explained what the basics are for the GWO. We who know you is we see that there are coming up new modules every year. And just a little bit of curiosity, what is your ambitions? Are we going to see 2 more modules each year, 3 more modules each year? And is the scope getting broader, or could you give a comment on that part?
There are a couple more modules coming, a couple more standards, because there are particular areas where standardization is necessary, for example, high voltage training and things like that. So very specific safety critical issues where the industry recognizes that a lack of available training is impacting safety at the bottom line. Because of how we are organized and how our members influence us, I would expect us to continue for the foreseeable future to introduce new standards on that basis. What's happening at the same time is having produced the entry-level framework and defined according to what the members themselves say represents a job role description for an entry-level technician in pre-assembly installation and O&M, a little bit more development in that area. So a lot more reference to define job roles so the skills and experience can be transferred from similar types of job roles in other sectors. A little bit more collaboration with other industry standards bodies who are looking at similar approaches. And then consequently, layering over of relevant GWO training standards so that people can understand, okay, here's the job role description, here are the standardized trainings that are available, where the gaps are, so that everybody can understand a little bit more about what is available, what isn't available, because that's what we have the capacity to be able to do, really. And always to be transparent, really, about that.
Yeah. And that brings us to one of the questions. Oh, actually, the only question in the Q&A so far. Marlene, I know that Marlene she has been working a lot with recruitment of staff for the industry, both in oil and gas sector and now in renewables. And she's asking, I feel we are missing standardization in recruitment of the candidates by agencies, suppliers, etc. Do you have any plans on improving this in a way to support the need of manpower growth?
Who would like to
Good
answer that, Mariana?
I wasn't sure if it was directed to me. I'm not sure if I could answer, but do you have any? Do you want to go first, Ralph?
I mean, so if it's standardization of job role descriptions, then yes. I mean, as I
I
said,
think that's what it is.
yeah.
Yeah.
And then trying to work potentially with the recruitment industry so that they can clarify the competences and capabilities that are necessary to be able to fill those roles at a larger scale. I think that's something that we could collaborate on.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And maybe just one point to add that is certainly something that we're all struggling with now is when you do look at the job vacancies, sometimes they vary. And there's also the case to be made of, do we really need the whole list A to Z of all of the exact qualifications? We've had discussions with other recruitment companies that also sometimes, they present what's called the wild card of someone who has all of the transferable skills, but maybe doesn't have the 10 plus years of experience, because that's what we're also seeing now is that difficulty of actually getting entry level people in, because a lot of the vacancies right now need, 10 plus years of experience. So that also makes it very difficult for those who have now decided, okay, I'm going to go and get a training, I'm going to go into the industry, and then find themselves on the other side of their computer and they're sending out applications and they're not getting the jobs right away. So this is something that, and we've been working with GW also to understand, okay, how do we standardize then the profiles so that, no matter where you're applying, you have been able to get the training for that specific profile, and you can also increase the chances of finding a job, because that's also the other point is we can't say that there are so many jobs, but then we make it so difficult to actually find a job to begin with.
Yeah, and then we have an issue. Actually, I see that actually we are running out of time, but just I want to address this because this is something that the industry, especially the supplier companies that doing operation maintenance services for the bigger companies are very aware of, and they struggle with it. It's about the lack of standardization, or harmonization even connected to the courses that is needed for doing a job at a specific OEM turbine provider. And they are struggling to actually keep track on all the trainings that they need to do in-house by the OEM. And I think both for GWO and for in Europe, it's important to address this challenge, because also the OEMs are struggling to get enough people now. The situation wasn't that for just 3-4 years ago, but now the situation that Vestas, for example, is missing 200 people in Germany as wind technicians, as an example, and they need to have a closer collaboration with both private training providers and the public education system, I think, in special.
Yep, agree 100%.
Absolutely.
And the other point that I didn't get to double down on, but how we can combine industry standard schemes with public education programs in some kind of practical, workable solution that allows the two to dovetail together, so that the industry can get what it wants.
Exactly, and that's a very good point. Sorry for interrupting, because I have to close it now. And I will just mention, and you're probably aware of it, one of our partners in Nunes Community College in Louisiana has actually got GWO approved as a part of the accreditation for the associate degree, and that's an example of how you could actually integrate the industry standards into the public education system. I think it's very interesting.
It's good news. It's nice.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you very, very much for having these speeches, and we'll for sure see each other again.
You're welcome. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.
Bye.